So the big question right now for Tesla investors is whether or not there's a slowdown in demand for electric vehicles. If you've been watching mainstream media, which will show you several video clips today, you'd sure think that there has been a meltdown in demand, and that's the reason for so many legacy automakers making announcements of cutting their production expectations. So today we'll explore whether or not it's true people are not buying EVs, or perhaps the reality is that people aren't buying legacy automakers EVs, but still buying Teslas. So we have Brian White joining us. He has done many deep dives in the legacy automakers. He has his own YouTube channel called My Tesla Weekend. Thanks, Brian.
It's great. This is such a ridiculous topic, and it's getting so much attention. We got to get it some truth out there. So let's do that.
Okay. Yeah. So there's many different video clips that mainstream media, CNBC specifically, has been showing. And these experts are talking about a massive slowdown in demand in electric vehicles. And then the question for us is to try to, kind of figure out whether or not there really is a slowdown, or people just don't want to buy the cars that are too expensive still, or not very good. And or does that impact Tesla? So let's start with Emmanuel Rosner. He is a Deutsche Bank analyst, and he's very bullish on Tesla, but he does believe that there's a slowdown in demand. And let's listen to what he has to say.
Joining us now is Emmanuel Rosner, Deutsche Bank auto analyst. A meltdown, not just a slowdown here, Emmanuel. Why and why are you so down on these EVs?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think the slowdown is in the EV adoption. So essentially, people are adopting EVs slower than expected. The meltdown is in corporate companies and investor expectations. Essentially, companies had planned massive investment on the premise of much faster adoption of EVs. This is not playing out. And now we're hearing from corporates that they're pulling back or canceling altogether these investments. Just last week, Ford basically said they're not going to spend $12 billion out of the $50 billion they were going to spend in EVs. GM has pushed out a second EV factory by about a year. They're pushing out some new models, and they're going to be launched later on. So it is essentially a real meltdown of expectations, which has resulted in a meltdown of stock prices.
What could change that picture? I would think way higher gas prices might change that picture, for one thing. More affordable EVs might change that picture for number two. Am I on the right track there?
You're definitely on the right track. Affordability, I think, is the name of the game. And this is what's crucially lacking from EVs right now. EVs are more expensive than their counterpart on the combustion engine side. And the early adopters basically didn't care and bought them. But now the average buyer is essentially saying, why would I pay 10, 15, 20, 25% more for the privilege of driving an EV? And so there's a lack of affordable model of affordable EVs. And that's something that, unfortunately, we feel will take some time to be corrected. The very reason why GM is saying, hey, we're going to take a pause, slow things down, and then maybe issue these new models later on is so that they can essentially try to work on lowering these costs and then come out with some cheaper, more affordable model. But that will take some time, probably another couple of years. Even Tesla, frankly, and we're long-term bullish on Tesla, but even Tesla is essentially struggling with affordability. They're lowering prices consistently, and they're really not going to have a more affordable model for another couple of years, probably at the earliest in 2025.
They've really lowered the price on that. They've really lowered the price on the Model X, which was a high price model.
All right. What's your thoughts on that, Brian?
It would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. A meltdown. Okay. So yeah, GM has slowed their rolls substantially. Part of it may have to do with the strike, but I think more of it has to do with when they announce these vehicles and the pricing on these vehicles, you and me and everyone in the Tesla space knew that that was ridiculous. You're going to make a car like the Equinox that's as big as the Ford Mach-E, that's as heavy, as long of range, as everything as the Mach-E, but for half the price of it. You can't do that. You don't have that capacity. Tesla would struggle to sell the Model Y at $35,000, and they wouldn't announce it. They could get there in a year or two, but I don't think they need to, and I don't think they'd want to. So saying that there's a meltdown is ridiculous. Ford pushed out their plans, yes, of course, because they similarly are not having the demand that they wanted. So the problem isn't that people don't want EVs. The problem is people don't want the ones that are available. If you don't have a frunk, if you don't have a charging network, if you don't have, quality engineering and the range that you would expect, and in the case of some cars, they're still outrageously expensive. The Mercedes EQ series are very good cars, but for far less money, you can get a very nice Mercedes, arguably much nicer one. So it's a product problem, not a technology problem. It is your car that's not selling, not all cars that are not selling. There are companies, I can think of one off the top of my head, that sells affordable EVs that are not $15,000 more for a comparable car. They are already at price parity, and it's ridiculous to pretend otherwise. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, so, Elon has talked about that interest rates and the macro hasn't affected people's affordability. But at the end of the day, Model Y is still selling, best-selling car, still growing like crazy, selling everything that they're making. And so the question is, there's a slowdown in EV demand, or not demand, it's slowdown in EV purchases, because when you're selling the Ford F-150 Lightning at $12,000 more than F-150 at this interest rate environment, people are going to pick the gas car. And these guys, all the other automakers aren't able to create a comparably priced EV to their cars, the gas cars. But Tesla is now at price parity to that segment. So let's listen more to other people. This is Car Guru. Car Gurus is a marketplace on a website where you can buy used and new cars. And let's listen to what he has to say about this potential slowdown.
Stalling EV market, and whether it really is stalling. Let's bring in Kevin Roberts, Director of Industry Insights and Analytics at Car Gurus. Is the market for electric vehicles stalling, Kevin, when sales are up as much as you say they are?
Yes and no. So we're in a situation now where the data can basically tell you whatever story you're looking to tell. So EV sales are definitely up. However, not all EVs are selling at the same rate. So we're also seeing rising inventory levels out there, which is suggesting the market might not be as willing to buy every EV that's being produced right now.
So the inventories are going up in part because I guess maybe some of the demand has come off, the froth in demand has come off, but also isn't it because the supply chain issues have been solved?
Yeah, so we're seeing rising new inventory across the board for all powertrain options. We're also seeing more EV makes and models available, which is also increasing that. And we're also coming from a really low base of EV inventory in 2022. So all of that is really helping to increase some of these percentage numbers that you're seeing.
I think the best line he said at the beginning was, you can look at the data any way you wish. You can look at the data. Okay.
I caught that as well. And that stuck out to me because that's what it feels like he's doing. He's saying, yeah, sales are up, but growth isn't. Well, is the market growing or isn't it? If you look back at global EV sales in 2020, it was 5% of all cars. In 2021, it was 10%. And in 2022, it was 14%. And 2023 looks even better. Now, you could argue that it doubled between 20 and 21 and only went up 40% in 2022. So yes, you could say that growth is slowing, but there's a lot of reasons for that. You can say, well, the people who can afford expensive ones have them now, and it's harder to move down market. And then he points out there's a lot of variety. There's way more models than before. Great. You've got an all-you-can-eat buffet, but it's full of garbage. Nobody wants it. When we were talking about the different manufacturers struggling, we didn't even mention Stellantis, and we usually don't, because in the US, they have kind of nothing available in terms of EVs. They've got hybrids that are quite capable and competent. The Pacifica sells very well. Jeep even makes hybrids. But what you don't have is the European models that they sell in Europe. And it's because the range is anemic even calling it anemic is generous. It's terrible. It's too short for U.S. buyers. So if you're not going to make a compelling product, people can't buy it. And just having a bunch of cars available doesn't help if they're not priced right for what they are. And that's why we're seeing Tesla succeed. At $35,000 for a very nice Model 3, brand new, you're running up against cars that cost significantly more, that have less range, no frunk, terrible charging infrastructure, an uncertain future. They don't know where to get them fixed. And it's unclear if these companies are even going to have this model in 6 months. So yeah, you're not looking at it the right way if you're pretending that the problem is universal and affects Tesla. It just doesn't make sense.
I love it, Brian. I love having you on. You really are just an incredible wealth of information. People need to follow you on your channel, My Tesla Weekend. You are likely one of the top Tesla retail researchers out there that knows your stuff. Thank you for that. So you said price parity. Tesla has, pretty good comparable prices out there. Let's listen to Rosner, because not Rosner. I'm sorry. This Car Gurus guy, because he thinks that Teslas they're not yet at price parity.
We know that there's been these price decreases, and Elon and crew seems to think there's this price elasticity that should exist, and these cars are much cheaper, yet obviously financing costs are much higher. But even if you look year over year, with the price cuts, they're not that much more expensive with financing rates that much higher. What's going on with this whole idea that you lower prices a lot and there's still not increased demand as it relates to Tesla?
I just don't think we're there to price parity completely with internal combustion engines out there. Looking at average listing price data from Car Gurus, today, month end October, average listing price of a new EV was 28% higher than an internal combustion engine vehicle. So there still is some pricing premium out there. And I think that's really giving consumers pause when looking towards EVs with some of the potential issues regarding charging availability and range anxiety.
When you look at, for example, the F-150 truck, the electric version of that truck is $8,000 or $10,000 more than the internal combustion version of it, right?
Yeah, so I was looking at the F-150 versus the F-150 Lightning today. So the F-150 internal combustion engine average listing price around $60,000. F-150 Lightning average listing price a little over $72,000. So if you put that into a month,
serious difference.
Yes, serious difference. And if you put that into a 60-month loan with a near 8% interest rate, just that MSRP difference could lead to a $250 increase in your monthly payment. And I think that's really giving consumers pause.
Quick question. Among the
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com. Okay, I'm so confused, Brian. The guy says, what's happening with Tesla's prices? He says, I don't think that Tesla's yet at price parity. Then he says, look at the average of gas cars versus electric vehicle cars. And then let me tell you about what's happening with Ford F-150. What?
Well, I've got an answer. Even in that terrible comparison, it still makes sense. He's saying $12,000. Do you know how much gas it costs to drive a Ford F-150 for 50, 80, 100,000 miles? The life of the vehicle, I should hope, is going to be 150,000 miles. These are not fuel-efficient vehicles. Well, it's got the EcoBoost, whatever. No, it doesn't. They get abysmal mileage.
Don't think that matters. What matters right now is price off the lot, high interest rates. What's my monthly going to be? Future savings of gas is something that people are not looking at.
Well, this guy should be smarter than that, I would say, but it does matter. It affects how much your monthly spend is on a vehicle. I think it's, and he is clearly taking the worst example he can find in the market to make a point. Like he said, you can make the data show anything if I start with a Ford Lightning. And the list prices to me are a lot less relevant than the actual prices. And there's a reason a third of all Ford Lightnings ever built are still sitting on lots. They aren't attractive at that price. I've driven one. It's a great ride. I had a wonderful time driving it, but I would not pay a massive premium to own one. It doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going. I was very, very frustrated that he purposely didn't even answer the question about Tesla price parity.
Actually, we'll address that real quick, because he did show that the Tesla Model 3s that he had on there were at 33,000, which is less than I expected. Maybe that includes the federal rebate, but 33,000. Do you know how few cars there are on the market for 33,000? And in that, with that kind of options package built in, automatically included, there is nothing close to it. To the autopilot alone is a feature you can only get anywhere close to by getting the top trim of another car and then paying extra, and it's just included.
All right, let's look at the next big misunderstanding is inventories. Let's look at this.
Models that you see, which are the ones that are selling the slowest, where the inventory build is greatest? They're sitting on the lots longest. You know, Tesla doesn't have that problem because they really sell direct to consumers. They don't have a lot of cars sitting on their lot.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting case study of the retail sales model versus the direct to consumer model. There's definitely pros towards the retail model, and we'll see how that evolves into the marketplace. I think what the real kind of question now is, we saw automakers really moving quickly to get new EVs to marketplace, likely to parry Tesla's, dominance in the market. But what we're seeing now is a lot of early adopters have likely adopted, and with that pricing parity still not there, we're likely seeing some hesitancy towards kind of mass adoption at this rate.
Oh, brother. Okay.
So crazy.
Yeah, so he shows the chart of inventory, which is obviously the gas cars. It's trying to sell electric vehicles, and then they're stuffing the channel, so all these dealers have to buy them, and so they look like that they're selling them, but they really aren't selling them on the lots. But again, this is original. I love the way he says that there's positives to the retail sales model rather than direct to consumer. We live in different worlds, I guess. I don't understand why there's positives there. Maybe positives for his market. Excuse me.
Sure. And what he's looking at is there's you've got all those long inventory times. So some of you may know I recently bought a Tesla. Mine counted as inventory, unsold inventory, for less than 2 weeks. They didn't make it for me. It was in transit to my region when I placed the order. So it was probably 8-9 days after it reached the location that I was able to pick it up. So that's remarkable. That's ridiculous. And they're able to do that because they can see who's taking out test drives and how many, and make a quality assessment region by region of who's looking at what, the same way Amazon does when they manage their inventory. So they can see who's doing test drives and allocate cars to the different areas where they believe they're going to sell. And they're very good with their pricing. They're very smart with it. And I don't care how bad inventory gets for, a good example was I think it was the Mini that had something like 180 days of inventory. And that was on the gas models. I don't care how bad their inventory is when everybody else's is still around 30 to 60 days. It's not relevant. So if you're talking about the mass adoption, you got to talk about the mass leader, and Tesla moves a couple units.
Couple units?
A couple.
Perfect.
One or two.
Perfect transition, because this is exactly the point. Okay, we're going to actually show, is there a slowdown in EV demand? No. Is there a slowdown in EV adoption? Yes. Why is there a slowdown in EV adoption? It's because the legacy automakers aren't able to produce quality cars, equivalent cars at lower price points. But that doesn't mean Tesla is in that bucket. They're selling a couple of units. So if you look at this chart here from the first 3 quarters of 2023, this is Q1 to Q3 of 2023, Tesla sold 10 times as many EVs as any other car maker. So in the red line, Tesla's at the top. The red line is the 2023 Q1 to Q3. And then the gray line is 2022 Q1 to Q3. And then you've got Chevy. So Tesla sold nearly 500,000 cars. Chevy at the second is at 50,000, 49,000. That's how far they are behind. Then you got Ford, then you got Hyundai, then you got Rivian, BMW, and so forth. So all these guys in the US market, they are struggling to sell anything. They're not able to build, but Tesla is doing great. So, I mean, okay, so is there a slowdown? And then, of course, Elon replied to that chart saying, room for improvement, I suppose. I don't know if he's referring to
I don't
Tesla to grow more, or is he referring to, hey, everybody else has to get better? Sawyer interpreted it as everybody else has to get better. He goes, yeah, we'll see, because GM announced that they're going to delay their production of Chevy Equinox, Silverado, GM Sierra. They're just totally delayed it. And then this nice tweet from Connecting the Dots. He's our fellow friend. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's got this upcoming YouTube deep dive video that he's going to do. But basically, he's saying that the reason why you see a slowdown in demand is because these automakers, they're not really trying to sell EVs quite yet. They're just trying to show it. So GM's strategy is to launch and sell just a few units so that the management gets their bonuses. They're short-term focused. Investors are happy. They want to say, hey, we're leading. We're heading into this thing. Don't you worry. But in reality, their purpose is to sell just small units long before actual ready for production. They don't want to sell many before their cylindrical cells are available because of pouch fires in the Ultium. Yeah, thoughts on this?
Well, I can't speak to the pouch fires in the Ultium, but we know that the Ultium platform is bad. It is expensive. It did not deliver on any of the hoped technical advantages that they were really counting on. So if you're, let's say, a terrible CEO, isn't it easier to just offer words than it is to offer products? Words just fall out of your face, but products you have to actually build. So it's that theory, while it is just a theory, sure makes a lot of sense. It really adds up because why wouldn't it? It's very easy to just hype it and say we're gonna have the best thing ever, and then just kind of kick the can for as long as you can and hope technology catches up. Batteries are still getting cheaper and better all the time, with or without GM's involvement. And at some point, they will be able to sell cars profitably in the electric drivetrain configuration, assuming they're still around. And I believe that they are of the mind that they are too big to fail and would easily get another bailout should it become necessary, and it may.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brian. Join us every Wednesday. Brian Way is on this channel, and he has his own channel at My Tesla Weekend. Thanks, everybody.